Album of the Week, episode 45. Hey guys, this week we're talking about Windborne by the Dallas Brass. So the Dallas Brass are obviously based out of Dallas. So we've got, on this album, we've got Chuck Lazarus, Matt Peterson on trumpet and flugelhorn, Jeff Thomas on bass, trumpet, alto and tenor trombone, Michael Levine on trombone, John Wassoon on bass, trombone, valve trombone, and tuba, and Mark Loritz on mallets and percussions. So that's the members of the Dallas Brass. At the time of this recording, we have a few new members. Both trumpet players are no longer with the Dallas Brass. But anyways, so that was the Dallas Brass at the time of this recording, 2008, I believe, a while ago. Anyways, we've got Andy Timmons also on guitar, Matthew Nicole on piano and keyboards, and Dan Wojciechowski on drums. And as far as additional musicians go, Edson Warden on trombone, John Adams on electric bass, Ron Snyder and Ricardo Bozas on percussion, Lauren Lang, Motoi Takeda, Delmar Petties, David Kempers on violins, Scott Jessup and Dave Herman on viola, Deborah Brooks on cello, Clifford Spohr on double bass, and Kathy Kersey on vocals. Whew. So this isn't your normal brass quintet CD, and Dallas Brass isn't your standard brass quintet. When I think of a standard brass quintet, I think of something like Empire Brass or like Canadian Brass. 5 brass members, 2 trumpets, horn, trombone, and tuba is what I normally think of. Dallas Brass is known for being that. No horn on this though, no French horn, but normally that they have, as far as now goes, they do have that, and then they have a drum set player, and then they have like a percussionist, timpani, mallets, stuff like that. So it's not your standard group. I personally, I've said this before, I've also done a review, it'll pop up here, done a review of this one, Dallas Brass, American Musical Journey. Really good album. I think that was one of my first ones. I think that was like my second album of the week or so you can check that one out. This is this is their older album. That one's relatively new, but this is like a smooth jazz arrangement. All smooth jazz arrangements here. We've got, I'll just read this part. It's got some nice, not a whole lot of liner notes, but it's got some stuff. Windborne. Contemporary smooth jazz is often comprised of solo saxophone and rhythm section. Occasionally a trumpet or flugelhorn is used as well. The concept for Windborne was to create a new sound somewhere between smooth jazz and the more traditional big band by combining a rhythm section with a brass ensemble. All but 2 of the compositions are originals written for this project. The exceptions are St. Thomas, which is excellent, which is a dynamic high-energy treatment of the Sonny Rollins standard. The other is Backcountry, originally written by Wayne Harrison for the Dallas-based trombone band Them Bones. I don't know that group, so I'll have to check them out. But anyways, a little bit about the Dallas Brass. Tour nationwide, performing with 5 brass and percussion. Their repertoire focuses on American classics from marches to swing Dixieland, Broadway, and more. Since Dallas Brass does not tour with a full rhythm section, their standard repertoire does not typically include the music heard on the CD, which makes sense. Windborne remains a unique and distinctive studio project for Dallas Brass, and that is 100% true. I've never heard something quite like this. This is kind of its own thing. Brass quintet with this style, orchestra. It's really, really interesting. I enjoyed it a lot. So I'm a trumpet player, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the trumpet players on this album. Matt Peterson, I tried looking him up. I don't know a whole lot about Matt Peterson. He's no longer with the group. I think he does a lot of Broadway stuff now. That seems kind of the path that he's gone in as far as I can find. Not a whole lot out there. Chuck Lazarus, I should have double checked, but I believe he's 4th/utility trumpet. I think that's right. I know he's with the Minnesota Symphony Orchestra right now. Excellent player. I actually just listened to a Brass Junkies episode recently within the past few weeks on Chuck Lazarus. It's an old episode. I'll link it below if you want to check it out. If you don't know of the Brass Junkies, I love their podcast. It's great. But they interviewed Chuck Lazarus a while ago. So Chuck Lazarus is an excellent jazz player, and obviously he's a really good orchestral player because he's won a big job. He's fourth trumpet in Minnesota Orchestra. So he's great. I really like his playing. And speaking of which, on this album we've got April Sunrise, Sea Breeze, Sky Dance, which is the track of the week, Avenue, Brazil, Feels Like Love, Hang Time, Harbor Island, Night Beat, Backcountry, New Life, Coming Home, and ending with St. Thomas, which I was a close second. The reason I chose Sky Dance was because Chuck Lazarus was on the flugelhorn solo, and I just loved it. This whole album kind of gave me like if you know who Chuck Mangione is, kind of that vibe with the flugelhorns and stuff. It's a really, really cool album. I enjoyed it a lot. Like I said, it's not standard for brass quintet, so you won't get this a lot as far as brass quintet repertoire goes. So it was a nice little jazz classical combining thing, and that's a lot what the Dallas Brass is known for. They're not the standard Canadian brass, Empire brass, stuff like that. They're their own thing, and they're their own niche. I'm personally not a huge fan of that. I wouldn't really want to. You know, who knows? I mean, if I got a job with the Dallas Brass, I'd be totally fine. But that's besides the point. I'd prefer, like, Canadian brass and stuff. Just personally, from a brass musician perspective, I prefer that music. But the Dallas Brass is excellent. The players are unreal. They're great. Especially on this album, the guys today are great, too. So, there's my little piece on Windborne, the Dallas Brass. Nice album to add to your collection. Let me grab the next week's album. Next week we're going to be going into a jazz album. We're going to be, it's a little dusty, I haven't listened to it in a while. We're going to be, looking at Michael Dees' All These Hands. Michael Dees was a guest artist at Stevens Point a few years ago, so I purchased one of his albums while he was there. I got the opportunity to play with him. I was in the big band playing lead trumpet as well as some section trumpet as well for a big band concert that we played with him, and then he performed a little concert of his own, so it was cool getting to work with him briefly. But we're going to be taking a look at this album of his. So I'll link it below. Windborne is also linked below where you can purchase it. It's also available on Spotify and probably other streaming sites. That'll be linked below. If you like the video, please give me a big old thumbs up. Helps me out a ton. Hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so you never miss another video with me. Comment below any albums that you'd like me to check out. I'm always up for new albums to listen to. And with that, I will see you next week.